I'm Brendan McCormack, and welcome to the Perth Fitfam podcast, where you get to hear from the best thought leaders and change makers from across the Perth fitness scene. In today's episode, we'll be catching up with sleep and respiratory scientist Martin McPhilimey. Martin currently works out of the Joondalup Health Campus and has qualifications including a Master of Science, Master of Research, and a Bachelor of Sport and Exercise Science. Martin is passionate about fitness and aims to inspire, educate, and help athletes and fitness enthusiasts to achieve high performance in a healthy way. If you love what we do, then you can become a supporter of Perth Fitfam by joining our fan subscriptions on Facebook and gain access to exclusive content, discounts on merch, and more. And make sure to give us a 5-star review on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher for your chance to win a Perth Fitfam shirt, which will be given away at the end of every show. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the podcast. We are on. So I've kind of ruined the first question, but that's okay. So we got to act really, really surprised. Okay, so podcast, Perth Fitfam podcast number 25 with, I can't say, the sleep scientist.
That's it, yeah.
Yes, and my bald brother, Martin McPhilimey.
McPhilimey.
You know what? I listened to the podcast you were on with Alice and Sean before we came, and because Alice struggled with it, I practiced so hard, and I'm like, I'm not going to stumble on this. And there you go. That was my one opportunity.
Do not worry, mate. My whole life, I've gone the whole life where people have just called me all different things. So I don't even take notice anymore, to be honest with you.
Martin McPhilimey. There we go. I got it. Rolls off the tongue. All right. So today we're going to be talking about sleep. We're going to be talking about what it is, its effect on your performance and your recovery as an athlete or as a fitness person. But to kick things off, I have a few questions of my own, and I want to bust some sleeping myths, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
All right. First question. Is it possible to learn in your sleep? So if I was to listen to a How to Speak French, if I was listening to a song or a podcast, would I learn from that?
Well, there's actually some very recent research that's come out that suggests that, yes, we can learn during our sleep. Sleep is a process that actually enhances learning. So if you have gone away and you are reading and studying, having a nap after can increase your chances of actually learning that content. Because as we sleep, there's certain processes that we go through that file the memories and store that and upload it into the system, into the brain, and that's how we do learn. But there has been recent studies that come out where if we're wearing earphones or listening to things, that actually, yes, we can kind of in a certain way, not to the extent of reading a book and learning the content, but the study actually looked at, can we remember certain words that we haven't previously heard and then pick those words out? And it suggests that actually when you have sleep and you've listened to those words, you're more likely to be able to pick those up. So like you do listening to Joe Rogan, you're probably taking some of that information in, certainly. Yeah,
so to give people context in that, Martin and I were speaking earlier. So for probably the past 3 years, I go to sleep every night listening to a Joe Rogan podcast. For some reason, that's just the habit which I've developed that puts me to sleep. So my concern was, if I'm listening to a Joe Rogan podcast with Alex Jones and Eddie Bravo, and we know they're probably the most outrageous people in the world, it kind of concerns me. What am I putting in my brain whilst I sleep? So there you have it.
I would certainly be wary of the content that you're listening to when you're sleeping. Yeah, at the end of the day, we're not fully unconscious. Dreaming to a certain extent is like our thought process is still continuing with an odd. Your subconscious and your conscious merging together, so you could be enhancing your dreams. And dreams occur during REM sleep, which is essentially the sleep that we do use to learn these processes, and especially with motor skills and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So one point that you said is that it's beneficial to take a nap after you finish studying or learning something. So you recommend napping?
Yeah, well, it depends. Depends on how much sleep you get in.
Okay. So I sleep, let's say I sleep, we try to get 7 to 8 hours.
Yeah.
So we go to bed at 9:30 and wake up around 4 a.m. to 4:30 without an alarm.
Yeah.
I nap every day.
Okay.
At least half an hour.
I mean, 15 to 30 minutes is not going to be bad. If you're training hard and you're in a period where you could be overreaching or overtraining, then an additional nap is going to be probably beneficial. But if you're a sleeper who only gets less than 6 hours, then having a nap up to an hour can actually improve performance. If you're someone who sleeps more than 7 hours and you're not particularly overtraining or you're not particularly training really hard, then actually having that extra hour nap can be detrimental to performance.
Okay. Yeah, interesting.
So there is too much sleep.
Okay, excellent. That's good to know. Now, next question. Is it possible to speak another language or in another tongue in your sleep? So sleep talking if you don't know how to speak that language. So I've heard that this is a thing.
I actually wouldn't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. That's a bit of a difficult question. Would you be able to do that? As a psychological point of view, let's think about what Carl Jung used to think, who's a very famous psychologist. He used to believe that the dreams are the collective consciousness. So it's the consciousness of everyone around us and all our previous history. So if in your family somewhere that you may have German or you may have French or whatever, potentially there might be a small chance, but yeah, that's just going off what a theory is in psychology, but I wouldn't know anything about it.
That's so funny. So the reason why I asked that is there was a girl that lived across the road from me when I was in high school, and she used to tell me that she would speak Egyptian at night. And she looked Irish, man. Like, if she did her 23andMe, there is no way she would have been 1% Egyptian.
Well, you don't know. The Egyptians had a big, they're a big part of the community that we don't know. And there's a lot of people that I think have Egyptian in them. I have had patients here before who've looked at me and gone, "Do you have Egyptian in you?" I'm like, "Well, Scottish, Irish, and English as far as I'm aware."
Yep, I'm the same. There you go. So I'm going to put that down as a highly unlikely but possible. All right, important question. Is sex apnea a real condition? Asking for a mate.
Sex apnea. Sexsomnia is a real condition.
Okay.
So sleep apnea is a condition. So that's where your airways are collapsing on top of each other. And that's the main thing that we actually treat here, cardiorespiratory sleep. But sexsomnia is basically a REM behavior sleep disorder where there has been known to be cases where people actually have sex during their sleep and are not aware of it. So yeah, that is a truth.
Yes.
People have been dismissed from cases of rapes and things like that because they've been proven actually during their sleep, and even murders.
Really?
Yeah.
There you go. Michelle, I told you it was a real condition. There you go. All right. Myths busted. Moving on. So, first of all, Martin, tell us a little bit about yourself and your qualifications in the field of sleep.
Okay. So originally I was an exercise scientist, did a master's of research in that area. And I focus mainly on respiratory sciences and how we can improve exercise by looking at improving respiratory performance or respiratory muscle performance. And then I decided to go into clinical sciences and in clinicians and medicine. Respiratory and sleep go hand in hand because of issues like obstructive sleep apnea and a lot of sleep disordered breathing. So as a part of that, I trained then to be a sleep scientist in a hospital back in Nottingham in the UK. 3-year training program. And my main research area when I was doing another master's degree and whilst I was doing my clinician work was looking at how poor sleep or sleep apnea can affect the metabolism.
Okay. Yep. Interesting. So who do you currently work with?
So I currently work for a company called Respiratory Sleep.
Yep.
We also have a brother, like a sister company called Cardiovascular Services, and the CEO, Phil Curry, he's came up with this idea where we're trying to integrate health services, and that's to say someone who has a cardiac issue, we know that the respiratory system and also the sleep system is associated with those issues. So if you go to see a doctor, that doctor's not just going to look at your heart, but they could say, okay, or there could be something going on with their sleep here. So it's very easy to then get the test from the people who are particularly in the room next door.
Yeah, sure. So who are the kind of people that you're working with at the moment? Like who's your clientele?
Our main patients will be general public, people with health issues. So people who are sleepy during the day, who have, they might have heart failure, or they might have cardiac arrhythmias. People who have generally poor health. So mainly it would be more towards the senior side. Yeah. But we do see typically some people come through who have sleep apnea. So rugby players, often New Zealand Maori people, they have a tendency to have...
Is that because of their size?
Yeah, particularly can be to be the size. So there is a direct correlation between BMI, even if it's muscle or fat, and having obstructive sleep apnea. But in the particular people who over here who in the rugby players, there tend to be people from, a lot of them from New Zealand, and they have a jaw structure that's quite narrow at the back, and that can cramp the airway. So it makes the airway easy to collapse when they're falling asleep. So people tend to snore more, and then the airways collapse, and that then causes a lack of oxygen in their body, which disrupts their sleep and fragments their sleep.
Yeah. So then what do you do in that sort of situation?
Depends on the severity of how bad it is, but one of the main treatments that we actually use is a little device called CPAP. Mm-hmm. Got models behind me here. And that is basically a small device that blows air into the airway and just keeps your airways open. So then the snoring disappears and you can breathe more freely. So then you don't get disruptions in oxygen because you're breathing fine.
Awesome. Now, this is going to be the crux of it, and this is where I'm going to let you geek out on the side of stuff. So, first of all, like, what is sleep? Like, what is sleep actually, and why do we need it?
Okay, so sleep is there's many reasons why we sleep, and it's to begin with. It started off as like an evolutionary process where we're just trying to quiet down and survive away from predators, and that become an energy conservation sort of thing. So we would go and hunt during the day and then keep our energy at night, but the reason why we sleep in your field, the main reason is going to be two things, and that's going to be recovery, and then also learning and motor control and storing memories. So if you're trying to learn a new skill, there's a particular part during sleep that actually we need to ensure that happens. There's 4 stages of sleep. So there's wakefulness, then there's non-REM, and there's REM sleep. And in that non-REM, there's stage 1, 2, and 3.
Yep.
Okay. Now, stage 3 is what we need for recovery. So, roughly 70% of our growth hormone is released during that stage.
Okay.
And that occurs during the first half of the night. So, say if you're going to bed late and you're only getting 4 or 5 hours sleep, you might actually miss a big part of that stage 3.
Okay. How does that work then? Like, does your body know based on the time it is about when it's going to produce certain things, or is it how much sleep you've actually had?
So we run off we run off what's called circadian rhythms, and how we actually tend to go to sleep is in the brain. We've got chemicals and neurons in the brain that connect each other, and we have either chemicals that like inhibit those neurons, so they deactivate the brain, or excite those just neurons. And when it's light, we basically get an increase in excitatory activation in the brain, and when it starts to dim down at dark, we get a release of melatonin. And from a process that happens throughout the day, so say when we're exercising, we're using ATP, for example, adenosine is the chemical that actually causes us to have this, it causes us to feel sleepy.
Okay.
So as a byproduct of that, it's built up through the day, and then when we get to a certain point, we start to release melatonin. That causes us then to go to sleep.
Okay.
So to go back to that question, leading on from that, is that actually then the body will need to prioritize actually recovery. So that stage 3 is probably the most crucial part of sleep that we can get. So it prioritizes that for the first part of the night, and then for the latter part of the night, it's more REM sleep, and that's more to do with filing of those memories and the learning of the coordination. So you're in CrossFit, for example, if you're doing your fundamental courses, you're learning your Olympic lifting. If you were to lack that REM sleep, you would find it more difficult then to go back in the gym and to reapply that and learn that skill.
I find that really, really interesting that by getting better sleep, it sounds quite basic, but when you put it even in a simple form like that requiring sleep to make you smarter, to make you retain more information, which is kind of backwards from a lot of people do, because they got to try and hustle and bustle and rely on minimal sort of sleep, which I find fascinating. One question I had with the ATP, so the byproduct of the energy production, which ATP is required for. So does that mean that if you do exercise or more physical exercise, then that should actually help promote better rest?
Yeah. So light to moderate exercise, obviously throughout the day, can increase the amount of adenosine that we have. So that causes this pressure to sleep. Build-up of that makes us more sleepy. So that can actually help improve sleep. However, if you're in CrossFit, or if you're a bodybuilder, for example, and you're doing real high intense weights, that can actually be detrimental to sleep, because we need to be able to activate the parasympathetic nervous system to be able to get to sleep. And what that whole process of doing intense exercise is actually increasing the excitatory neurons in the brains.
Yes.
So that would actually make it more difficult to sleep. But moderate to moderate exercise can actually definitely improve sleep.
Okay, so then coming from a personal position from myself, so I would be a more highly stimulated person, in a bro science way of saying it, with a fried central nervous system.
Yep.
How's that going to affect my sleep, and how can I improve?
That's one of the main causes of insomnia, is having too much sympathetic drive.
Yep.
And that's also one of the main causes of what causes all the health issues related with having poor sleep. So having that more stimulation, it's all about balance. Everything in the body is about homeostasis at the end of the day. So we need to be able to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. And to do that, that is through breath work. So maybe 4-second windows, 10-second windows, slowing the breath down, focusing on that, meditation. Like yin yoga, that sort of stuff. That's all. It's all going to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Magnesium, that's even can help aid with that as well. And I think, who's the guy who does mobility WOD?
Kelly Starrett?
Yeah, Kelly Starrett. He has something called a gut smash, which is like basically lying on a half pumped up medicine ball, lying on that and just really just like massaging the gut.
Yes.
And that's where your adrenal glands are. And when you massage those adrenal glands, you can actually activate the parasympathetic nervous system.
Really?
And doing that, it can hurt. You've got to try and really relax the gut while you're doing it and just let the ball kind of sink in.
Yep.
It can hurt for a little bit, but if you just roll that all over, say 15, 20 minutes, you'll feel real sleepy after that.
Now, we spoke off camera about diaphragm breathing.
Yep.
Can you explain that? Is that relatable to this situation?
Yeah, well, the vagus nerve that controls the respiratory muscles and what causes the diaphragm to contract is associated with parasympathetic stimulation.
Okay.
So when we breathe from the diaphragm, and that essentially means that we're taking a big breath in and we're pushing out from our stomach and then we're breathing there rather than the chest, that can, again, activate that and slow the body down, slow the mind down. And the Buddhists were taught to do that when they were trying to go to sleep, and they would really calm their body down as much as they can. And then they would use visualization to actually almost imagine your nervous system, imagine that part of your nervous system like a light, and that light switching off, and that can actually slowly, your brain can actually process and slow down and relax, and that you can feel your muscles almost lose all that tension.
Do you do any meditation yourself?
I do, yeah. So I do 10 minutes each morning. So every morning, just before I get to work 15 minutes early, and then just before I start my day, I do 10 minutes.
And how do you do that?
I actually use Sam Harris's app. So an app called Waking Up.
Yeah, I know Sam Harris. That's right. So I know Headspace, but I know Headspace as the meditation app, but I know he has an app. I've never used it.
Yeah, so he's only just released that. Prior to that, I was using Headspace, and a friend recommended Sam Harris.
Yes.
And I like it because he comes from a point of, it's almost like you've got the scientist point of view from it.
Yes.
And he takes you through all your senses. So it's like now tells you to focus on what you can hear around you. Now what can you smell, what you touch, and you can feel yourself go through that. And I've noticed from that meditation that I've become more aware of what's around me when I'm just walking around and about.
That's really, really cool. I'll make sure that I put all these in the show notes for anyone that's interested to check them out themselves. So for me, and like going back to my situation, so every time I've done a meditation, especially if it's a plant meditation where I'm delving more into my subconscious, every single time I am told, or it's brought to my attention, that I should be addressing either caffeine intake or reducing my stress levels, even though it's something that over the years I've definitely brought down, and I'm definitely nowhere near as wired as what I used to be. Yeah. But how would you suggest that someone like me, where if I try and relax, I can feel my muscles twitching?
Yeah.
How would you suggest that I deal with this?
So number one, I would ask you, how well are you sleeping?
How well?
How well do you feel you sleep? Do you feel like you get good quality sleep?
I usually feel really good, but it's funny that we're doing this podcast because for the past 3 nights, I was a little bit ill. And then last night, I probably had the worst sleep that I can remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we have poor sleep, or it's a bit of a vicious cycle. Cortisol is something that we talk about as a stress hormone, and I don't want to put people off as cortisol because we need it. But in chronic situations, that can lead to a lot of issues with sleep, and having a lack of sleep also increases levels of cortisol. Mm-hmm. And so how I would deal with that is, definitely avoiding caffeine, because caffeine, again, increases cortisol. But going back to all those things that we talked about earlier on about trying to activate the parasympathetic nervous system would be one of the main things that I would look at trying to reduce that, because you're trying to reduce adrenal activity. Mm-hmm. Light exercise. If that sort of stuff's disrupting your sleep, then perhaps if you're training in the evenings, I've just recently shifted to now training in the mornings, and I've improved my sleep massively. Yeah,
I actually did that about a month and a half ago. I switched to 5 a.m. training sessions, and I do find it really, really good. I've never woken up with an alarm for probably 10 years. Yeah. It's just I've just had a lifestyle where I haven't needed to. So my lifestyle would be I would wake up at 4:30 naturally. But if I was training in the evenings, I would wake up and I'd start work straight away. So I'd just literally sit in front of a computer and start work at that time, which probably wasn't ideal. But it was just the habit which I had.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the first things you get up is you go straight onto the computer. Straight away, you're giving your brain that shot of light, which can be good if it's natural light. But if you're on your computer and you're going straight into work and you're flicking through emails and you're flicking through a lot of stuff, you're already putting your mind in that stressful situation. And that could be contributing to, and if you've already got elevated levels of cortisol in the morning, it could be enhancing that, and that could be causing what your levels of shake. How much caffeine do you consume?
I growing up as a rep for a supplement company, this is disgusting. I would consume up to a gram of caffeine a day.
Jesus.
Yeah, I know, that's crazy, right? Even I look back now. So I never go under 500, never go over 500.
Yeah.
But if I can keep my consumption 300 or below, that's pretty good.
So I would probably still say if that's been a quite chronic thing and you're still getting the shakes during the day, I'd say that trying to actually cut some caffeine out for a while to give your body a rest from it.
Yeah.
And to see the impacts that have on you.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to do it as well. A lot of people think, oh no, I can't survive without it. I've got too much to do. I need that. It's that hit. Some people enjoy it and it becomes a habit. But I know for a fact that if you remove that you will have benefits from less stress in your life.
Yeah.
And if you're a person who is go, and you can see from the amount of work and the content that you're putting out that you are that sort of individual, removing caffeine and just giving yourself 3 or 4 weeks to try, maybe a challenge that you would want to do.
Yeah, I actually will. I kind of it's one thing which I know that I need to do for my own health, even for the future. I would hate to have heart issues at a young age.
Yeah.
Especially if it can be avoided. So it's definitely something that has been brought to my attention. But yeah, there's been a struggle there of actually letting go.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's because it's just a habit. At the end of the day, it's something that you've done. You've had a gram of it in your life, and you're slowly weaning off. But it's just something that's gone. I just like having a coffee or whatever is your pre-workout.
Yeah,
it's changing that behavior and looking at it from a different perspective to say actually I can probably survive without that, but I need to challenge it and test it first.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop caffeine usage because I know if I do it. And I say it on camera. I can't pull it out of it.
No, that's awesome.
So I'm going to do it, and I'm going to check in with everyone. I'm going to check in with you and everyone in 3 weeks, just to kind of let everyone know where I'm at with it.
I've had previous people who've come in or I've spoke to who have been quite stressed at work, and they've just switched to decaf.
Yeah,
and all of a sudden they've realised that actually that was it. That was the answer. It was just the caffeine. Nicotine, I think it would be similar. Nicotine withdrawal. I think nicotine does have an impact on. It is a bit of a stimulant, so it does increase heart rate and can cause similar like symptoms that you would have to drink caffeine.
Yeah, I started using nicotine gum as a cognitive enhancer. And I found it didn't give it the same crush as coffee, so I would probably consume less caffeine. But then, you can't. How did Tim Ferriss say? There's no such thing as a free lunch. If you're going to have anything which is going to go up, there's going to be a negative side effect eventually. Yeah. So, all right, let's try and let's test myself, and we'll come back with this one. And the reason why I ask these questions about myself is because dealing with so many people in the fitness industry, I know that there's hundreds of people that listen to this that are in exactly the same boat.
And the thing is with caffeine as well is people don't realise how long it stays in your system for. So it has a half-life of about 5.5 hours.
Yeah.
So that means even if you take a pre-work at 5 o'clock, at 10 o'clock, it's still half that's in your system. And it only takes the smallest amount of caffeine to block that adenosine, which is the chemical that makes us feel sleepy. And that's how it works.
Yeah. So on that, a funny note. So me talking about drinking a gram of caffeine a day. So I remember being in like my early to mid 20s and not being able to sleep until like 3 a.m. in the morning. And obviously it's because I had a pre-workout in the evening before I trained. And I remember thinking, I have insomnia. Like that's how ridiculous I think that some of this stuff is, that you won't look at what you're consuming, but it's quite obvious what's going on. But it's like, I must have a condition.
People don't look at themselves.
No.
People look at, okay, I've obviously got something wrong with me. Is rather than saying, what am I doing wrong? I've got something wrong with me, and that's what you just told me there. And it's the thing is because, okay, I don't want to look at the habits that I'm making because a part of my ego wants to tell me that I feel I'm doing is great, everything I'm doing is good.
Yeah.
And I must have something wrong. So it must be insomnia. But insomnia, it's a very vague word really. And it just means insomnia is often caused by an issue that you think you're not going to be able to function the next day because you can't sleep that night. And it can be caused by caffeine. It can be caused by on your phone before you go to bed, too much light. All those sort of things can cause insomnia.
Yeah, for sure. Now, rounding down to applying sleep and the benefits to athletes and fitness people.
Okay.
So why should they get good sleep?
Why should they?
Yeah.
We've talked about the recovery. So during that stage 3 non-REM sleep, that's where we get 70% of our release of our growth hormone, and that is going to stimulate the release of insulin-like growth factor from our liver, and that's where the main bulk of muscle repair is going to happen. Also, testosterone is released during sleep. So if we have, say, for example, you only sleep less than 6 hours, 5.5 hours, you'll have testosterone levels to that of a 10-year person senior than you.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So
how fast would that change? If I got a blood test one day and I got my hormone panels done, and then I had poor sleep, so that was after good sleep, and then I had poor sleep and I got my results again, would it be that rapid of a change, or is it a gradual sort of
6
thing?
to 7 days.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So 6 to 7 days, and you'll probably see about 10% reduction in your testosterone, which is similar to that of someone who's about 10 years senior.
So that's really interesting. And us talking about before about the experiments that I do, and you asked, did I control sleep? And I did not. But I did say that at the end of a 12-month diet experiment, sleep had more effect on how I felt. So I knew if I was going through a stressful or having bad sleep, that had more effect on how I felt than any specific diet. So this year, one of the tests I'm doing is comparing a herbal testosterone supplement versus a pharmaceutical testosterone, and just seeing what effect that actually has on the body. But now it's interesting knowing that even that half an hour sleep can be a change of 10%. Tracking my sleep through this whole process will be really, really important.
Tracking your sleep with everything, because people don't look at sleep in terms of the science. It's a new area. They're looking at sleep only, but when they're looking at nutrition, there's been quite a few studies where people have dieted for, say, 2 weeks on a 900-calorie diet, and they've had people sleep for 8 hours and some for 5.5 hours. Both of them lost 3 kilos of weight. The ones that slept 8 hours lost 1.5 kilos of fat. The ones that slept 5.5 kilos only lost 0.6 kilos of fat.
That's a lot of muscle wastage.
Exactly. So because of increased levels of cortisol, we get increased levels of protein breakdown. And the body then prefers to break down protein, but also we get a reduction in leptin levels as well. So leptin's the satiety hormone, but it's also a hormone that actually helps with energy expenditure. So when that's low, it's like we go into that, there's a starvation mode, and it's caused by lack of sleep.
That's really incredible, because you hear of so many bodybuilders, and let's say Arnold talks about sleep faster. Yeah. So I find that really, really interesting. Okay, anything else with how it would apply to athletes or fitness people specifically?
Yeah. So I mean, if there is research that suggests if you're in a position where you can, say if you're towards the latter part of the season and you might be overreaching, overtraining, and actually extending sleep can improve performance and then reduce risk of injury as well. So I would go from, say, if you're only sleeping 7-8 hours, but then maybe you're at the end of a bodybuilding cut or something like that, actually you may be able to increase that to 8 or 9 hours and get benefits from that.
That's good sleep.
Or if you're a CrossFit athlete that's got some competitions coming up soon, but you've been training really hard for it, extending that sleep can also potentially improve your performance as well.
Your body naturally sort of tells you that you need this amount of sleep, doesn't it?
It does. It does to a certain extent, yes. If you like yourself, if you don't wake up with an alarm, you should know from your alarm. If you wake up from your alarm and you haven't pressed snooze, 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 you need more sleep. If you don't use an alarm and you sleep longer, you need more sleep as well.
Yeah.
Another perspective from athletes that you could look at as well is that the role that sleep plays on your metabolism. So your ability to actually transport glucose into the muscle. So, for example, recovery from exercise is roughly around about 30 to 40% less when you have a reduction in sleep by only 3 or 4 hours. So that if you were to have only 5 hours sleep and you're training really hard, compared to someone who has 8 hours sleep, the glucose that you're trying to transport back into your system and into your muscles and recover is going to be significantly less. So therefore, if you were to do a training session the following day,
you wouldn't have enough energy.
your energy level is going to be less,
Yeah.
right? You're going to feel more tired. And one of the biggest things that impacts athletes with sleep is actually how hard it perceives. So your RPE levels.
Yep. Okay.
And the cognitive function of that.
All right. So then, most importantly, what's practical advice and the best hacks that you have to optimize your sleep?
Number one thing would be always, if you can, always be getting consistency.
Okay.
If you can, make sure you're getting up at the same time in the morning.
Yep.
And potentially trying to get to roughly within an hour at the same time at night. Mm-hmm. Because we run off a clock, the body it literally is a body clock ran by light. The second thing would be is that follow the light. So if the sun's going down, dim your lights down in your house.
Would you use blue blocking glasses, or do you?
I don't have them, but
Yes.
now I'm starting to work on my own stuff at home on a laptop. I'm considering purchasing them because the researchers suggest that actually they do help block out the blue light and help stop blocking the melatonin release.
Shell and I both use them.
Yep.
And I got to say, I think that they're awesome.
Yeah, okay.
So every night, as soon as we're in, because we're usually on our devices, try not to do work before I go to bed, but on our devices or watching TV or something. So yeah, we both have them, and yeah, I can't rate them high enough.
Yeah, 100%. And then avoiding caffeine after late noon. Like 2, 3 p.m. just because it's still in your system when you go to bed. Again, alcohol, trying to avoid alcohol, anything that you think is going to disrupt your sleep.
Yep.
Creating that, the fourth idea I have is creating a behavior as well. Sleep's it's sort of your body's and your mind accepting that it's the end of the day.
Yeah.
So just having a habit or a process that you go through to say, okay, right, I'm going to go and have might have a green tea or herbal tea, bit of magnesium, bit of breathing, stretching, lights are all dimmed down, and now I'm going to sleep.
Yep.
And one tip that I always say to everybody is that actually when you go to brush your teeth, don't turn the light on. Because everyone goes into their bathroom, especially maybe females, is actually they go to their light, turn a bright light on, take all their makeup off, stare in the mirror, bright light in their eyes. That's going to push back that melatonin peak by around about 45 to 60 minutes.
Yep.
And then people can't get to sleep.
That's actually really interesting.
Have a dim light on somewhere in the room so you can see in the bathroom, but don't have your main light.
Do you do that? You take your makeup off early, don't you?
Yeah, I take my makeup off before I have a shower and then dinner, but I clean my teeth with the light on.
There you
Yeah,
go.
so everyone does.
Guess what? We're having a dim light in the
Everyone
bathroom.
does.
Should we have a candle?
Candles do not affect. They do not affect your melatonin. So candles are natural light, which is absolutely fine.
And that's to do with the different colours. So there's green, there's blue, and there's red within the light, isn't there?
It's just natural light. At the end of the day, it's a light that we as humans we should be using.
Yes. Yeah, there you go. So romanticize your bathroom and put up candles. Anything else? Apps that you use that you recommend? Fitbits, trackers, these sorts of things?
Trackers. So if we're looking at the accuracy of trackers, then the Oura Ring is probably the only one that's been validated to a certain extent, or the one that's been researched.
So Oura Ring is AURA, I believe.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to put a link in for that one too. They're quite expensive, and you've got to personally order them from the States. So I think they actually make them up as you order, so they take a bit of time. But from all accounts, Ben Greenfield, all the biohacker guys, they all rate them the highest.
And that's it's just a sleep tracker, and that's around about 80 to 90% accurate in looking at when you're asleep and when you're not asleep. So we can look at what's termed sleep efficiency. Mm-hmm. So we can see how much time are you spending in bed, but versus how much time you're actually sleeping for. So there might be people who go to bed from 9 till say 6 and are in their bed for 9 hours, but might only sleep for 8 hours of that.
Yep.
So to predict, it's around about 89%.
Sure.
But when you're looking at stage 1, stage 2, it's only around about 50%. And then looking at REM, it's probably I think it's less than 30% accurate.
And that's about a $700 ring. Maybe
exactly.
US. Yeah.
Exactly.
From memory. So then what is the best way to keep track of your sleep?
How you feel.
Okay.
It's subjective feeling. If you're having to wake up if you turn your alarm off and you happen to sleep more, then that is an idea that you need more sleep.
Yep.
But then just having that regular bedtime, making it a behavior, and saying to yourself, okay, I'm going to commit to this much sleep when I can. Yeah, there's going to be periods in your life where you've got a lot of stuff on and you're going to have to push back. But as long as 85% of the time that you're getting that consistency, that's fine. But then looking at how many times are you being disturbed during the night? How many times do you feel like you're waking up? What do you feel like in the morning? And yeah, you can use trackers to a certain extent to look at, okay, is there any kind of pattern where I'm actually getting less total amount of sleep according to these? Because even though they're their accuracy is 80 to 90%. You can still see, you might, on a Sunday night, for example, have less sleep because you've trained real hard, Friday to Saturday to Sunday, all of a sudden you're dropping down.
Yeah.
You might be able to see a pattern there. And if you download the data and look at monthly data and you say the specific days, well, what's going on during these days?
You'll be able to see trends.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it might not be accurate, but you will definitely be able to see a trend.
Yeah.
I guess no different to using body fat scanners. They may not be 100% accurate, some definitely less than more, but you still will be able to see trends and things that what are going on. So practical advice then. So for me doing these tests, how would you suggest that I track the sleep component?
Okay.
Would you just say, have a diary, this is how long I slept and this is how I
Sleep,
felt?
sleep diaries, yes. Subjective sleep time is not the greatest indicator. I mean, if you wanted to do it, then you'd ideally want to be looking at actually having a sleep test and looking at your brainwave activity and stuff like that. That's the gold standard. But you've got to use what you can and what potentially you can use. So if you wanted to if you wanted to look at your sleep and go, I'd go with the Oura Ring.
Okay, yep.
But if you don't willing to spend that much money on it, then what you can use. But I would control if you are going to do like a study like you say you do, where you want to try and keep the limits. I would just say, right, during this period, I'm going to commit to going to bed at 10 and making sure I wake up at 5 or whatever.
Okay.
And just make sure you have that commitment, because we can say, yeah, maybe you're going to sleep equally as good during that time, unless there's other factors that come on, people disturbing you and stuff like that.
Now, for travel,
Yep.
what's the best way to be able to limit damage during travel? And the reason why I ask is because I know that next week everyone's going to be flying over for the Arnold's, me included.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a 3-hour loss. So what's the best way to stop you from getting that jet lag? Even that 3 hours is a killer.
Yeah, so when you're traveling east, it takes about 1 day for every hour a time zone you're traveling. So to be catching up with normal sleep, you'd need to be going 3 days before.
Whoa. So all the athletes, I hope that they're all booking in.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. So if you're an athlete and you're flying over to the East Coast or you're traveling east, then you need a day for each hour that you're traveling. But if you're traveling west, it's only half a day.
Okay.
Because you're following the sun rather than losing the sun.
It's much easier to fly back.
Yeah,
you definitely don't feel it. In that instance, going to the States, let's say that's a 14-hour trip.
Yeah.
So that would take 2 weeks recovery time.
Yeah, there are things that you can do to improve that. So prior to, you can make sure that before you even fly out, you can set the times and you can set your food habits so you're already in the position you're going to. Mm-hmm. So follow the rules of where you fly into. Try and sleep when you can when you're on the plane, so that you're waking up and you're sleeping on time. In times where it would be night over there, and then waking up when it's wakefulness over in America, and skip the meals as well. So fasting during that period, because food is also linked to the circadian rhythm that controls sleep. Okay. Because of leptin and all those hormones that can help regulate sleep and stuff like that. So if it's nighttime where you're going and it's 3 a.m. in the morning, and they walk around and they say, "Do you want some food?" You say,
"Don't eat."
Resist it basically.
Yeah.
And then melatonin can help with jet lag.
Okay.
So you can get prescribed melatonin from doctors over here. I think in America you can actually buy it over a counter.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, over here I think you can go to a compounding pharmacy and they'll make up some really good melatonin for you. Yeah. But you need a script to be able to do that.
Yeah, you need a script to do that. But I'm sure if you were to go to your GP and say, "Look, I'm traveling to America. Can I get some melatonin? This is my reason." It's not a harmful thing to take. As a sleep aid, it's not the best thing, but for trying to shift your sleep phase, it can be helpful there.
Yeah, and it is definitely that short-term fix, but I've used it and it was really, really effective.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, are you going to be doing any workshops or anything over here?
So,
because fitness is your passion. You said that you really wanted to get into that space.
I've been the first time I stepped in the gym when I was 7 years old.
Oh, wicked.
My dad was a bodybuilder and powerlifter. He loved it, so he took me there. I've loved sport all my life. Fitness is my passion. Health and fitness both my passion. Waiting for my visas to come through.
Awesome.
So I'm not permanent resident yet, but once I am, I'm starting to look at how can we look at people like yourself and say, okay, right, you're an athlete, you're a high performing individual, you want to push yourself further, but there are those things that you could probably improve in terms of your health, like removing the caffeine to improve your sleep, which then might aid in your improving your recovery, which then enhances your exercise performance. So there is a concept that I have called performance through health, which is my Instagram at the moment, and that's just me blogging my ideas in my head that I can then build a website. So
awesome.
Look out in the future, definitely.
Yep.
I'll be looking at improving people's their sleep, their nutrition for their recovery, and things like meditation and stuff like that.
Awesome.
Help create behaviors that can then say, everyone's focusing on, can we create fitness by going harder? I'm going to say, okay, well, can we actually get the balance right and enhance recovery?
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Even like doing workshops and things like that over here, I'm sure people would love to hear about it and they'd love to meet.
Yeah, I'd love to do lectures, seminars, things like that. So if there's people out there who want to collaborate and they already do sort of stuff, and I'm more than happy getting up in front of people and speaking. I actually, I love that. I buzz that.
And I reckon that you'll have a lot of like helpful information for people, and they'd love to hear it as well. So even if it's something that we chat with Alice about and that we collaborate just to help you get out there,
yeah,
I think it'd be wicked, man. Because like I said, going through all these tests, I can say that sleep was one of the biggest impacts out of all of these things. There was definitely no silver bullet, but that was a lifestyle which made a huge difference. Now, if people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way?
Okay, so if they want to contact me because they actually have, they think they've got a sleep disorder, then the best way would be contacting me through my work here. So that's my email, martin.mcphilimy@sleepcrs.net.au.
Awesome. Yep.
But if they're looking into optimize their sleep or trying to look for ways to improve their performance, then performancethroughhealth@gmail.com. Or my Instagram, performancethroughhealth.
Perfect. We'll put links for all of that. Martin, thank you very much.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
That's it for this episode, and we hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, then make sure to give us a 5-star review on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher for your chance to win a Perth Fitfam t-shirt, which we'll be giving away at the end of every show. And just remember that if you love what we do, then you can become a supporter of Perth Fitfam by joining our fan subscriptions on Facebook, and you'll gain access to exclusive content, discounts on merch, and more. Thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned for more of the Perth fitness scene to come.